Hello. Okay, so today I wanted to speak about how you can make your training a little bit easier and a bit more successful, a bit more clear in your dog's head. We use a method called mark and reward, or marking and rewarding. You need to think of it as if it was as if you're taking a snapshot of the exact behaviour that you want your dog to do. If you had a camera, the exact time you would click, they've done the correct thing, and that's the time you would give them their £20 note for doing it right. That's the time you would pay them. You'll need to think of a marker word. Now, it's not that you can't say the word good, you can absolutely use the word good, but be super conscious in terms of training that it can sometimes become a bit poisoned. It doesn't always mean that the dog is doing something. So we say it so often. So every time I leave the house, I'll say, see you later, be a good boy, love you. And I've said the word good, but it wasn't related to any training exercise. So it's not specific to when I've got my training hat on and I'm trying to do some work with my dogs, I have a separate cue word or marker word which I use just for marking a specific behaviour in terms of training. So at Hairy Poppins we use the word yes. It's short, it's sharp, it's a naturally happy, positive word. It's really hard to say the word yes in a grumpy voice. You just don't do it. And I don't like grumpy voices when we're training dogs. So yeah, we use the word yes. You can use any word that you want to, but try to have a separate word that isn't just that good boy or that good girl, because you'll say that so often and it won't always be related to a training exercise, and it won't always be with the guarantee of a £20 note coming straight afterwards. So mark and reward. So we use sit as an example because that's just a very common exercise. So if you're training your dog to do a sit, at first you might need to use a lure if they don't know it. So the lure is when you would have the treat about 4 inches from their nose. If this is their nose, this is the treat. You want the treat about 4 inches from their nose. For a sit, you would be tipping the treat back to encourage the head back over the head. By mechanics, when the head goes up, the butt goes down. The second the bottom hits the floor would be your yes. That's marking the behaviour. That's the behaviour I wanted you to do, puppy. That's the one when your butt hits the floor. Yes. So then within 3 seconds after that, I'm going to give the dog the treat. When I'm using the lure, I would just release the treat. Eventually we want to phase the lure out because we just want it on verbal cue. So you would say the word sit, the dog does the sit. Maybe at first they're sort of looking at you, what is it? So you're not saying anything. You'd ask them to sit again. The second the bottom hits the floor, that's the exact moment I would be clicking my camera, because that's the exact snapshot of the moment that I want. So that would be my yes. And then within 3 seconds I would put my hand in my treat pouch and pay the dog for doing a good job. What it's not is yes and treat at the same time. You're not saying yes to give the dog a treat. It's not yes, it's get the behaviour, the dog sits, you say yes the second they've done it, and then you've got a couple of seconds there, 3 seconds, to get your hand in the treat pouch and pay them. So it's very clear, it's very black and white in the dog's brain. We use mark and reward for the majority of our training at Hairy Poppins. I can't think of many instances when we wouldn't use it. So whether it's eye contact, if I want the dog to look at me for 1 second, once they've achieved 1 second is when I would say yes, and then I would give the treat. If I wanted them to look at me for 10 seconds, I'd ask them to look at me, count to 10, yes, and then I'd be giving them the treat. If I wanted them to stay in a sit whilst I walked off 2 steps, I would ask them to sit, I would walk off 2 steps. They've achieved it, so I would say yes, I would turn around and I would come back and give them their reward. If I wanted them to stay in a sit for 10 steps and I might be gone 3 minutes, that would be my yes, then I would come back and pay them for doing the right thing. So it's capturing the moment. Think of it as capturing that exact specific behaviour that you're training your dog to do, marking it, building up that history in their brain that when they hear that yes, they know, boom, that's what my human wanted. I've done it now. Now I'm going to get a nice payment for it. Makes it a bit clearer in terms of training. It's easy, it's simple. Once you get your head around it and you get used to using those marker words, so you can do it all the time. Sometimes I'll just randomly, I'm not even in training mode, I'm just sitting there of an evening watching telly. Perhaps Ruby or Emily have come in from the back garden and they've gone straight to their bed and laid down. Well, I really like that, so I'll say yes and I'll throw them a treat. because that's a really nice behaviour. I haven't taught it, but I've just grabbed that moment, because they could have come in from the back garden and then started goofing around in the living room or jumping up on the sofa, which again, I don't mind. I love having my dogs on the sofa, but I really like that they come in and just lay on their beds. So I'll give that a random yes and then pay them for it. Through repetition, they're going to repeat that behaviour more in the future, because I built up a nice history there of what it means. It means good things. So yeah, think about a marker word that you're going to use, yes, or can be any word that you want to, and then reward. And just quickly, your reward isn't always food, just remember that. So in terms of loose lead training, when I'm training a dog to loose lead, quite often the reward that the dog wants is to sniff that lamppost or that tree or that whatever it is, that wall, that driveway. So that's the reward. It's not about the treats. If they give me a nice behaviour, i.e. that close that we teach, where they come and sit at your side, and then they do a nice loose lead with me, well, they can sniff that lamppost, but I don't want them dragging me into the lamppost, because that's a reward. I don't want to give them a reward for an undesirable behaviour. I want a desirable behaviour. So thinking outside the box, it can be throwing the toy. If your dog loves playing ball, loves playing fetch, practice your sits with it. When they bring the ball back to you and you've got it in your hand, the only way they can make you throw it again is if they offer sit or eye contact or a hand touch. Get a behaviour and then the ball becomes your reward. You'll throw it again. So it's not always about food and treats, it's thinking outside the box. Rewards are endless. Scents and smells, food, treats, access to the sofa, opening the front door to go out for a walk, opening the car door so they get to go for a run. The actual jackpots are endless, but it's thinking outside the box. Use food initially. Okay, good. Mark and reward. Any questions on marking and reward? Put them in the comments, or you can drop me an email, info.hairypoppins@gmail.com.